They hinted I squandered my gifts, that my life had veered off course, that I was the puzzle they couldn't quite piece together for others. Not openly, of course. My family excelled at subtlety, but I perceived it nonetheless. In their pauses, the almost pitying glances at family gatherings, the stretched silences after the inevitable question, "So, what's Jessica been doing lately?" Cite 596, 597, 598, 599, 600. Eventually, I ceased correcting their assumptions. Let them whisper. Let them believe I was adrift, because sometimes the truth prefers not to announce itself. Sometimes it patiently bides its time. I am Jessica Parker. I'm 34 years old. I reside in a simple apartment on the outskirts of Portland. I brew my own coffee, tackle my own plumbing hiccups, and yes, I still drive that aging Toyota Corolla that protests audibly with every left turn. Cite 600, 601, 602, 603. In their view, I'm the one who remained stagnant. The one who didn't marry, didn't ascend the corporate ladder, didn't acquire a house with a manicured lawn. I became the cautionary tale within the family, a hushed warning of roads not taken. It wasn't always this way. I was once the high achiever, inducted into the National Honor Society, valedictorian of my class, recipient of a scholarship to Stanford, the family's destined lawyer. Cite 603, 604, 605, 606. That label stuck until I withdrew halfway through my second year of law school, shortly after my engagement dissolved and my anxiety became impervious to sleep or medication. They didn't strive to comprehend, they didn't inquire, simply modified their tone when uttering my name. My sister, Emily, conversely, adhered to the script. She majored in marketing, married young, and climbed the ranks in a firm where she could confidently wear heels and carry a designer handbag. Cite 606, 607, 608, 609. Emily was a source of easy pride. I wasn't. 3 weeks before her wedding, a group text arrived. "Could you lend a hand with the programs or some other small detail? I realize you're not exactly employed at the moment." I blinked at the message, a wave of irritation washing over me. I own my own company. It's not showy, it's not easily explained, but it's substantial. Substantial enough to cover my rent, provide jobs for 3 part-timers, and warrant a feature on a national podcast about social impact. Cite 609, 610, 611, 612, 613. They remained oblivious because they never bothered to ask. Nevertheless, I agreed to assist with the programs, because that's the role of the quiet ones. We smile, we offer reassurances, we handle the burdens. Yet, occasionally, we quietly construct things that dwarf the achievements of those who disregarded us. Cite 613, 614, 615, 616. The evening before the wedding, I found myself at the rehearsal dinner, meticulously folding napkins into elaborate origami swans, as if it held profound significance. My mother introduced me to Emily's future in-laws as Jessica, the creative one. She's into freelancing, I believe. That vague catch-all term they employ when they're unwilling to admit their ignorance. I offered a polite smile and a non-committal, "Something like that." Cite 615, 616, 617, 618. Emily remained preoccupied, engrossed in laughter with her bridal party, but her fiancé, Nathan, observed me for a fleeting moment. A hint of curiosity, or perhaps something more, flickered in his eyes. Then it vanished. I didn't dwell on it. The wedding day arrived swiftly. White roses, a flowing veil, rows of smiling faces who all understood their designated roles. Mine was straightforward. Table 5, adjacent to Aunt Denise, who once informed me she was praying for me to find direction. Cite 618, 619, 620, 621, 622. I chose not to correct her, because if you express contentment while deviating from their definition of success, they assume you're being dishonest. Dinner was served. Toasts were offered. I maintained a low profile, ate politely, and smiled at the appropriate junctures until Nathan the groom approached. Site 622, 623, 624, 625. He leaned in, a glass of champagne in hand, and inquired softly, "Excuse me, are you by any chance the Jessica Parker I've heard about?" My fork paused midair. He stared, a look of recognition on his face. "The founder of Teachwell, the digital platform for underserved schools." His tone wasn't mocking, it was genuinely impressed. My family ceased their conversation. Their forks hovered above their plates. Site 624, 625, 626, 627. The ensuing silence wasn't laced with judgment this time. It felt like a rupture in their preconceived narrative. I met Nathan's gaze and simply confirmed, "I am." The silence at table 5 stretched for precisely 6 seconds. That might seem brief, but in wedding time, 6 seconds is an eternity. Sufficient time for forks to be lowered, eyebrows to ascend, and conversations to abruptly halt. Site 627, 628, 629, 630. My mother's expression resembled someone who had just spilled red wine on the meticulously enforced dress code. Nathan's gaze remained fixed on mine. "Teach well," he repeated, almost to himself. "I remember reading about it in Fast Company. It's the platform providing rural schools with real-time access to updated curriculum, correct?" I nodded, feeling the weight of numerous eyes that I had diligently avoided, finally acknowledging my presence. "Yes, that's my creation." Aunt Denise blinked in astonishment. You built a company?" Seat 630, 631, 632, 633, 6 and 34. I resisted the urge to retort, "No, it spontaneously materialized while you were preoccupied with Emily's Pinterest boards and my non-existent love life," and instead offered a simple, "For the past 5 years, yes." Nathan appeared genuinely impressed. "That's remarkable. Weren't you a panelist at that education tech conference last year? I watched it. Your anecdote about the school in rural Utah with limited internet access nearly brought me to tears." Site 634, 635, 636, 637. The table seemed unsure how to process this revelation. My mother recovered first, forcing a strained laugh. "Well, we always recognize Jessica's creativity." That loaded word again. Creative. The family's euphemism for not normal, not stable, not one of us. But on this particular evening, it lacked its usual sting. Site 637, 638, 639, 640. Nathan gestured to an empty chair, sat beside me, and initiated a barrage of questions. How did I develop the back end? How did I secure funding? Who designed the accessibility interface? For the first time in years, I engaged in a conversation about my work at a family gathering. Not in hushed tones, not as an object of amusement, but as something of value, because it was. Site 640, 641, 642, 643. And as I spoke, I noticed my sister observing me from across the room. Her expression was devoid of a smile. Emily had always been the center of attention. She received the praise, the celebrations, the spotlight. I received the expectations, until I abandoned law school and inadvertently dimmed her radiance. They resented that. Not because I failed, but because my perceived failure was loud, public, and followed by my disappearance. Seat 643, 644, 645, 646. They remained ignorant of what I had quietly constructed. Teachwell originated from a simple Google Doc. I was tutoring at underfunded high schools part-time and consistently heard the same complaint from teachers. "We're too isolated. We lack the resources of larger schools." So I created a solution, a tool that enabled districts to upload, share, and modify lesson plans collaboratively, saving time and bridging resource disparities. Site 646, 647, 648, 649. I relearned coding, enrolled in night classes, and sold my furniture to finance initial server space. I subsisted on instant noodles and endured countless grant rejections. But I persevered because each time an educator in a rural community expressed how Teachwell transformed their teaching, it ignited a passion within me that no familial validation ever could. Cite 649, 650, 651, 652. 3 years later, a nonprofit organization took notice. Funding materialized, followed by more funding, and then a feature on a prominent podcast. Currently, Teachwell serves over 40,000 users, primarily in schools that were likely unknown to anyone at that wedding. But schools that held immense significance. They never inquired about any of it. And perhaps that was the most painful aspect. Not their misunderstanding, but their complete lack of curiosity. See to 652, 653, 654, 655. Following dinner, as Emily danced with her new husband, my mother approached. Her smile was taut, the one she wore as a shield. "You never mentioned this Teachwell thing," she stated. "Teachwell," I corrected gently. She tilted her head, a flicker of defensiveness in her eyes. "Why didn't you disclose it earlier? You could have said something." I offered a shrug. Didn't seem like anyone was interested in listening. She blinked, momentarily disarmed. It was difficult to gauge her true emotions. Cite 655, 656, 657, 658. "You could have volunteered the information," she added, recovering. "I did," I countered, "just not in a way you were willing to acknowledge." She didn't respond, instead diverting her gaze as if mentally rewriting the encounter to eliminate any discomfort. Later that evening, I quietly slipped away from the reception and strolled along the garden path behind the venue. Seat 658, 659, 1660, 661, 662. The silence was profound, the kind you earn after enduring an excess of noise. I paused beneath the string lights, recalling the last time I experienced such stillness. It was the day I walked away from law school, the day no one reached out, the day I became the family disappointment. Cite 662, 663, 664, 665. A faint smile touched my lips. Let them cling to their silence, I thought, because I am finished shrinking to conform to their narrow definition of success. This was merely the beginning. The Monday after the wedding, my inbox presented a different landscape. There was the usual assortment of school district requests and the ever-present urgent login issues subject lines. Cite 665, 666, 667, 668. But then halfway down, something novel captured my attention. Subject: Inquiry, Keynote Panel on Rural Education Solutions from Executive Director, West Coast Learning Summit. I opened it cautiously, half expecting it to vanish. "Dear Jessica," it began, "we became acquainted with your work through the Forbes Education feature and recently received a glowing recommendation from a contact who attended a wedding. Nathan, it had to be. Seat 668, 669, 670, 671, 672. They were inviting me to speak on a panel next month in San Francisco, alongside 3 other founders, a senator, and the director of a major charter school network. It was real, professional, the kind of opportunity one might typically forward to their parents with a proud, "Thought you'd like to see this." But I didn't forward it. I stared at it for an extended period, then closed my laptop, because even now, a part of me questioned whether it would hold any significance for them. Seat 672, 673, 674, 675. That afternoon, I sought refuge in my usual corner cafe, the place where I worked when the confines of my apartment felt too restrictive. While stirring my coffee, I noticed 2 new connection requests on LinkedIn, both from individuals who had attended the wedding. One had written, "I had no idea this was your work. Your accomplishments are truly inspiring. I would be grateful for the opportunity to connect." Cite 675, 676, 677, 678. The term connect felt foreign. For years, I had been practically invisible. background noise at family gatherings, reduced to polite nods and superficial conversations. Now, suddenly, there was interest, attention, even admiration, but it originated from sources outside my family. My phone vibrated. A text from Emily. "Jessica, are you available for lunch this week? Just the two of us." I reread it, surprised. Site 678, 679, 680, 681, 682. My sister and I hadn't had a genuine conversation in over a year. We had exchanged pleasantries during holidays, posed for obligatory family photos, but we hadn't truly connected since before her engagement. I replied, "Wednesday at noon, the Garden Cafe on 5th. Emily responded, "Perfect, looking forward to it," complete with a heart emoji. The heart caused me to pause. Emily wasn't prone to using hearts, at least not with me. Site 682, 683, 684, 685. When Wednesday arrived, she was already seated when I got to the cafe, sunglasses perched atop her head, iced latte half finished, perfectly composed as always. She greeted me with a smile that seemed slightly rehearsed. "Hey," she said, rising to give me a hug. "You look fantastic." "Thanks," I replied, taking a seat. "You too." We placed our orders, engaged in small talk about the weather and wedding gifts, until she finally leaned forward. "I was unaware of your company," she admitted. Really unaware. Site 685, 686, 687, 688. I nodded. "I gathered that." She hesitated, a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell us? You could have mentioned it sooner." I studied her carefully. Would it have made a difference? Emily blinked, momentarily taken aback. Of course it would have. I raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge. "Last Christmas you inquired if I was still tinkering with that online thing." Site 688, 689, 690, 691, 692. The year before that, Mom suggested, "Perhaps next year you'll have something substantial to share." And each time I attempted to discuss my work, the topic abruptly changed. She lowered her gaze, stirring her latte. I suppose I didn't fully grasp. "That's precisely the point," I interjected softly. No one did because no one bothered to ask. A silence hung between us, thick with unspoken words. For once, she had no ready defense. Then she sighed, a hint of weariness in it. "You know, I think I harbored a bit of resentment towards you." Site 692, 693, 694, 695. That caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "You left," she explained. "You walked away from the established path, from law school, from everything they envisioned for you. And even when they criticized you, you still pursued your own course." I never possessed that courage. I absorbed her words. It was the most genuine sentiment she had expressed to me in years. I didn't feel courageous, I confessed. I felt like I was falling apart, but I had to choose a path that wouldn't completely shatter me. Site 506, 507, 508, 509, 510, 511, 512, 513, 514, 515. She nodded slowly, a newfound understanding in her eyes. "You chose something meaningful. I recognize that now, and I apologize for how we treated you, for how I treated you." I was momentarily speechless. I had envisioned this moment, but its reality felt different, more subdued, less triumphant, more human. "I appreciate that, Em," I managed to say. "Truly?" We sat in comfortable silence for a while. It wasn't the strained silence of past encounters. It was something else entirely.